Hello, welcome to Blueprints. I'm Bodine Sanders, producer and host. Joining me today is retired athletic director, current author, and podcaster, Jake von Scherrer. Jake is the host of the Educational AD podcast. Jake, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, I'm good. As I like to say, I'm a retired athletic director in Florida. If I was any better, I'd be twins.
Well, listen, thanks for being flexible and joining us. We're doing another episode via Zoom. I'm not in the studio today, but I'm hanging in there. I'm a little under the physical weather. That's what happens, Jake, when we get old, right?
Hey, you speak for yourself, okay?
Well, listen, let's jump into it. The first question I ask all of my guests is to share your blueprint and or your positive perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion based on your experience, and specifically for you in sports and as an athletic director.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me on your program. Very familiar with your work, love what you're doing, and very honored to be a part of it. As you said, I'm a retired athletic director, 41 years as a teacher, a coach, and then 25, 26 years as an AD. And about the only thing harder or more challenging than hiring a coach is cleaning up the mess after you hire the wrong coach. And so I think there's an overused expression, but maybe it's not overused. We say we're in it for the kids. Well, if you're in it for the kids, then you owe it to the kids to hire that best coach. So that's got to be number one. Man, woman, race, gender, you got to hire the best coach. Now, having said that, I think you as an AD need to look at within your own building and see if there's some deserving, hardworking head coaches or assistant coaches that desire to climb that ladder. You have to look within your own network. That might be your school district or your league or your state, and then continue to expand your network. Reach out and ask other trusted colleagues in different aspects of the sports world. Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a principal, maybe it's somebody from the community. And of course, we want to encourage diversity across all levels. There's pretty solid research that says it's not the be all end all, but it's a good thing when women coach girls sports. Doesn't mean that women can't coach boys or men can't coach girls, but there's a benefit to that. The same is true, with race. There's a demonstrated positive effect. So in that goal of finding that best coach, let's make sure we're checking as many good boxes as we can to do it for the kids. That might sound oversimplistic, but again, let's say you're at a small school, maybe it's in Florida, maybe it's in Pennsylvania. The coach of the year for the NCAA isn't going to walk through that door probably. So, you have a limited pool, but as an AD, you got to do your work too. Expand that pool. And as I said, try to check as many boxes as you can to make sure you're hiring the best coach for those kids. Does that help?
Oh, absolutely. And I want to piggyback off of something that I truly believe. If the athletic director and those in leadership in the sports department, if they're there for the kids, right, the goal should be to provide resources for those kids so they can continue to grow and develop. It's all about development, right? And so the more you provide those positive developmental resources for the kids to grow so they can continue to reach and attain the next level up, I think that should be also part of it. Does that make sense? Did I say that right?
No, absolutely. One thing that athletic directors really love to do is provide professional development opportunities for their coaches. But it's one of the things that sometimes they don't get to do because they're overwhelmed with the job of scheduling games and hiring officials and doing all the things that ADs do, talking to parents. I know that probably never happens at your school, but yes, providing coaches with on-campus opportunities, just at bare minimum, a monthly coaches meeting where we all come together and we try to share best practices. Hey, what are you doing that's working? Have you had this challenge? Being able to send coaches to your state conference, by sport, by department. We were very fortunate at the schools I was at. My bosses embraced the idea of what athletics, a good athletics program, brings to the life of a school. And so we were able to send pretty much our entire staff to their sport coaches clinic. And we also allowed them and paid for visits to other schools, to go to college camps during the summer to improve themselves. So it goes back to what I said. If you hire that right coach, you want to keep them there because it's hard to hire that right coach. So once you got them, it's on you as an AD to help them grow and become the best coach they could be. Nobody comes to you at 24 years old, a Hall of Fame coach. Okay. They become that Hall of Fame coach because of the help and the mentoring and the support that they had from hardworking athletic directors.
Well, great. Well, listen, let's jump real quickly into your origin story because I want to get to the next question after that will be about the books and the podcast. So share with the audience your origin story quickly.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was born and raised in the great state of Oregon. Grew up in a couple of small towns. My dad was a contractor, so we moved around a little bit. But those backyard games, those street football games, driveway, basketball hoop, that was, kind of my life growing up. Going to high school, was involved in multiple sports. I was a pretty good high school athlete. Ended up at a small college in Oregon, played football and was on the track team. Those became the sports that I ended up coaching. Wanted to be, I joke, I say injuries and a lack of talent kept me out of the NFL. But knew I wanted to stay involved in sports and wanted to be a head coach and kind of climb that ladder. I was a head football coach at 26 years old at a small school. That expression, you don't know what you don't know, certainly applied to me. I was fortunate to have some great mentors, some great assistant coaches, some great principals, great kids, and was able to climb that ladder. Coached small college football for a few years and track, and then bounced around the country on that college coaching carousel and ended up settling in Florida with my wife and our family. She's a career Hall of Fame coach herself. And since 2000, we've pretty much been in Florida. Got involved in our state and national organization for athletic directors. And as I like to say, at 66 years old, I'm still living the dream.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm preparing to live the dream. So I'm right behind you. Let's jump into the educational AD podcast because I'm telling you, it's a great podcast. I've taken a little snippets, a quick view of some of the episodes you recorded and some of the folks. And one thing I learned that there's an author out there like you and I, a former athlete, John someone, and he has a great book titled From the Root to the Fruit. And I like that conversation you were having with an AD, either it was in Atlanta or Florida. You remember the young lady you were having that conversation with?
Absolutely. That's Dr. Makia Troy. She's at Creekside High School in Georgia, and she's currently wrapping up a 30-week series with us that we call Teachable Moment. She talked about the root and the fruit.
So let's talk about your podcast. I mean, there's so many. It's very well diverse. When we're talking about diversity, you interview folks from all over the country on all levels, and it's just, I'm telling you, it would take me forever to try to watch all of them.
Well, Again, the short story behind the podcast, during COVID, it was my final year going into, I guess it was the second to last year before I retired. And at that time, I was the president elect of our state AD association. If you hang around long enough, it becomes your turn. So before you become president, you got to be president elect. And when you're the president elect, you have to organize the state conference. And so, again, this was 2020, the year of COVID. We were organized, we were ready to go. And then COVID hits. And like everybody else, our conference got shut down. Um, I reached out to a number of the people that were going to be presenting at our state conference and said, "Hey, there's this thing called Zoom. Would you be interested in doing some Zoom workshops?" And we ended up in April of that year. We did 2 weeks. We did two a day. So we did 20 workshops. We had almost 1,000 people log in, and we didn't charge for it. We just, put it out there on social media, and it was a lot of fun. We got some good feedback for it. And because of that, I was asked to appear on another AD related podcast, two gentlemen in Georgia. It's called Hanging with the AD. And I was able to, talk about that virtual conference, but I was also able to brag about our school and our coaches and our kids and, maybe a little on yourself. And I just got to thinking, this is something that I could do for our Florida athletic directors to help them share their story and talk about best practices. And I literally went home and Googled, how do you do a podcast? And started interviewing people on our FIAAA, our state association board. And it just it took off in a way I never could have imagined. I certainly enjoy the interviews, and now that I'm retired, I have a lot of time on my hands, so that kind of lends to the volume. But we're heard in all 50 states. We're heard in 84 countries around the world. We get downloaded about 2,000 times a week. It's not Joe Rogan numbers, but I think for our little niche, it's pretty good. And I think we've done a good job of, number one, letting ADs share their story and some best practices. And from a diversity standpoint, we've done over 1,000 segments, full interviews and shorter segments. Over half of those have featured women athletic directors and women professionals, and so we're proud of that. The podcast, as you had mentioned, it's produced a couple of books too, which are also fun.
Well, that's another reason why having a conversation with you was important, because my goal is to have more female leadership and female guests, and do a better job of that, because women's sports is taking off. I mean, more so than we could ever imagine. And you have a lot of connections. So I look forward for you to offer some referrals of some potential guests. Let me promote the book. Here's the first one, right? And it's All-Star Athletic Director, Insights from 10 Great Women Athletic Directors. Let's talk about that real quick before I talk about the Toolbox book.
Okay. Well, again, the All-Star Athletic Director book, one of my favorites. It wasn't our first book. It was actually, I think, our fourth or our fifth book, but it's one of the most recent ones. I reached out to 10 athletic directors here in Florida, all women. Some are at big schools. They're big county athletic directors in charge of multiple high schools. Some are small schools. We have faith-based schools. As you can see, I think we're pretty good in having a diverse group of women. And I just asked them, hey, you're going to get 3 topics. You choose the topics and you share with, again, these were podcast episodes, share with our listeners. And then we transcribed them into a book. And it was just really cool to see how athletic directors, they happen to be women, but how these athletic directors approached things that all athletic directors have to deal with, whether it was working with parents or facilities or awards, dealing with a tragedy at their school. It's definitely one of my favorite books that I've been involved with.
Well, The very first athletic director in the book, I obviously have an infinity for, and I look forward to chatting with her because Tammy Talley is from my hometown. So I look forward to the opportunity, if it's possible, to chat with her. The next book we want to promote and talk about is the Athletic Director's Toolbox. This is the third edition, but I'm going to assume you have more editions. The first, the second, this is the third, the fourth. So
there's okay, there's the second edition, and
okay.
here's the first edition. We've talked about the trilogy is complete. We're still doing interviews, so I guess a fourth edition will be coming out. One of our segments in the podcast. Well, I got to give credit where credit is due. An athletic director here in Florida, her name is Jerry Kelly. For many years, she did a workshop at our state conference called the New Athletic Directors Toolbox. And they talk about things for new ADs. And I just really like the title. I like the concept. So in our podcast, we had that segment for each of our guests. We would say, what 3 items would you put into a new athletic director's toolbox? And of course, you'd want to give a new anything, 1,000 different tools, but we forced them to limit it to 3. So as we were collecting these tools, a conversation with another great friend, Mike Elson. He's a retired AD, but he's the executive director for the Tennessee Athletic Directors Association. He was telling me, hey, Jake, are you keeping track of the tools? And I said, yeah, I've got a spreadsheet. I'm a type A guy. I want to see which one gets mentioned the most. And so we did a segment on, at the time, I think we had done maybe 100 interviews or so. So we had well over 300 different responses. And so Mike and another AD, Lisa Langston, and I, we did a podcast where we went down the top 20 tools. We called them the top 20 tools for success. And when we were done, Mike said, Jake, this would make a great book. And I go, you think? And again, how do you publish a book on Google? We came up with our first toolbox book. As I tell people who ask, it was so easy publishing a book. It's so easy. Even Jake can do it. So we kept doing interviews. We had a second edition. We kept doing interviews, the third edition. So the first toolbox, that was the first 150 interviews. The second edition was the second 150 interviews up through interview 300. And then the third edition, we got really excited. We did a total of 200 interviews. So the first 500 interviews the toolbox tips are contained in those first 3 books. And this week, I got to double check. We're going to be releasing interview number 525. So I guess the 4th edition will be coming out, maybe in a year or so.
That's incredible. Congratulations. That is absolutely incredible. Well, we're getting close to the end of the program, but I wanted to get your perspective on how, sports has changed with the NIL money sponsorship opportunities for student athletes and the transfer portal from a high school perspective. How is it changing the high school structure and process because of the way it's changing on the college level? Is it changing on the high school level because of the changes that are happening on the college level?
I'm going to say yes, it is changing, and it's probably going to change even more. I guess full disclosure, I grew up, I went to high school and college the entire decade of the 70s. So, I'm an old guy. And the discussion of, college athletes should be paid. I was always in favor of, letting them have, or letting them have, giving them, money so they can, go get a pizza, or they can go to a movie. They can fly home and see their parents on the holidays. I'm really not in favor of the extreme, the $13 million NIL deals for the superstars. And I know that's not everybody, but that's a different question. From a high school perspective, um, here in Florida, and I know this is not the same in every state. In Florida, a kid can uh, play football in the fall at one school. When that season's over, they can legally transfer to another school across state or across the street, play basketball for a second school. And then when that season's over in spring, they can transfer and run track or play baseball or tennis at a third school. And it happens frequently. And it's not because of the coaches, it's not because of the ADs, it's because I'll say a few years ago, our state legislature passed a law that says it's okay. There's not an athletic director or a coach in Florida that is in favor of this law, but it's a law. So we already have the transfer portal in Florida high school.
Wow.
And is it such a stretch to think that, Joe or Jane Booster is funneling some sort of benefit to that student athlete or their parents? I don't think it's such a stretch. Um, Now I'll share that nugget with athletic directors from other states, and they go, "You're kidding? That's crazy." And yes, it is crazy, but that's what our state legislature said. So um, I guess I'm getting on the soapbox. Oh, I wish it was like it was when I was in school, and hardworking kids and all this. But kids are kids, and this is the world we live in now.
How in the world are these kids going to build relationships with each other when they don't get a chance to know each other and build those relationships by being around each other for a long period of time? Because at least I preach this, in order to win, right, you have to have something in common. And in order to have something in common, you've got to be able to talk to each other and get to know each other and find out what we have in common, build a bond, and then therefore play for each other. You can tell kids you got to play for each other all day long. But if they don't have a personal relationship with each other on the field and off the field that's positive, they're never going to be on the same page in order to win. Does that make sense, Coach?
Oh, absolutely. And a couple of things. I read your book, and you talk, frequently about those relationships that you had with your teammates and your friends and also the coaches, which is another reason that, we in our world of educational athletics, we promote the multi-sport experience, because you're going to play for a different coach over those 2 or 3 seasons, those 2 or 3 sports that you play. And so you're being exposed to different coaching styles, different philosophies, people with different demeanors. And within that, to your point, a diverse selection of student athletes, of peers, that if you just play that one sport, whatever that sport is, you're kind of in a silo, and that's the only coach, those are the only student athletes that you're going to have in your network. So absolutely. And uh, it just, it, and this isn't recent. This has been going on for a number of years. I remember as a little kid, I'm sure you do too, as a fourth grader, fifth grader, in junior high, you see those varsity players running out on the basketball court or the football field, and you go, boy, I can't wait until I put on that jersey. I can't wait till I play for them. Now, it's not, I can't wait to play for the team. It's, well, how many touches am I going to get? How many reps am I going to get? It's about me. It's about the kid, um, as opposed to I want to be a part of a team. So those again, that's the cranky old guy on his porch saying, "I wish it was like it was in the old days."
I was started to read an article by a former professional basketball player who's now in the media, like we are, the new media, and Crawford is his last name, And I remember him as a player, and he was an unselfish player. But he was interviewed, and he made a comment about how AAU basketball, the parents are disillusioned. They have no idea that, and so I look forward to reading that article further, because again, a lot of it is not just coming from the student athletes. It's it's the inside distractions. Forget outside distractions. It's the inside distractions, because folks are, I mean, we can talk about it. Families are seeing dollar signs because of the money that's involved, or whatever it may be it college scholarships, potential, or pro. But, a lot of folks think their kid's going to go pro. My mom never thought I was going to go pro, so I never had that problem. But yeah, so yeah, I tell you what, it's just sports is changing all around.
No, absolutely. And to your point, I think it is learned. Kids learn their manners. They learn how to relate. And you're right. The parents, sometimes they are a little bit disillusioned, and that's one of the big roles of an AD now these days is working with parents. In fact, the NIAAA created a course. I was very honored to be part of that faculty called Partnering with Parents. Instead of saying, okay, mom and dad, you stay in your lane. Now it's, hey, we want to help you. And part of that is giving them a role. We're not giving them the keys to the car, but they're along for the ride. So let's make it a nice ride. This is what we need you to do to make sure your kid has a great experience. But it's a challenge.
Well, look, Jake, we've come to the end of the program. I appreciate you being my guest. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake von Scherrer, retired coach, athletic director, current podcaster, new media. He's done it all. He's doing it all. You are absolutely going to be invited back, because there's so much to talk about and not enough time in one day. I appreciate you. Again, I just want to thank the audience for being a part of this today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time and your attention. Stay tuned. There's more to come on Blueprints. Have a good day.